All right, our next speaker is Charlie Moore, the founder and CEO of Rocket Lawyer. The floor is yours.
All right. Okay, bear with me. As I said. All right, here we go. Oh my God! I was not gonna. There was music, and I was not gonna have to sing this myself, but I guess maybe I'm going to if it doesn't. There it goes.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. It's the 10 dual commandments. It's the 10 dual commandments. Number 1, the challenge, demand satisfaction. If they apologize, no need for further action. Number 2, if they don't, grab a friend, that's your second.
Your lieutenant, when there's reckoning to be reckoned.
Number 3,
have your seconds meet face to face.
Negotiate or negotiate a time and place.
this is commonplace, especially between recruits. Most disputes die and no one.
All right, so we woke up a little bit. I think maybe I'm the only, maybe, I'm not sure, Robert will have to tell me, consumer company, in the room right now. But, Rocket Lawyer is, and I'm going to talk about the 10 legal tech commandments. I got the idea, I saw Hamilton for the second time. I really hope that what I just did was fair use. If there's any IP lawyers in the house, and if not, don't tell anybody and don't post it. Thank you. Okay, I figured somebody would have that knowledge in this room. So anyway, started Rocket Lawyer a few years ago. I was a securities lawyer actually before I did that. I'm going to give you the 10 legal tech commandments as I think myself and the team have learned them over our journey in building this business. I'm probably going to talk more about people and business than I'm going to talk about law or tech. Because for us, people and business is what it's about, and both law and tech are sort of tools to help people get done what they need to do or protect themselves, et cetera. So rule number 1 is love the law as it should be, not as it is. The reality with law is that most people get hammered by it. Most of the tools and everything you're going to see, I am a recovering high-priced lawyer, okay? And most of the stuff is for high-priced lawyers and making them more efficient. But what Rocket Lawyer is for folks that can't afford that, right? And so love the law as it should be, and we think to our core that the law should be accessible for everybody. If anybody needs to defend themselves, if somebody wrongly accuses them of something, they should be able to. If they need to prosecute their rights when somebody has done them wrong, they need to be able to. And so our fundamental objective is to make it possible for literally everybody, see what I mean about tools? Is to make it possible for literally everybody to be able to have access to these basic tools of justice. Last thing on number 1, and then I'll go faster. The basic tools of justice for most people are, most people are not accused of crimes or things like that. Most people, it has to do with making an agreement. It has to do with estate planning. For small businesses, it has to do with just sort of basic compliance and things like that. Those are the tools of justice for most people and businesses. And so rule number 2, listen intently to customers and non-believers. So Lisa is a believer in Rocket Lawyer. And we've been blessed over the years. We have about 25 million account holders, about 1 in 10 American adults has at least tried Rocket Lawyer at this point. And so I know that we have made significant progress. I also know that we've managed to learn a lot and probably more from non-believers. And so as you'll see, one of my other rules is to make changes. So listen intently to customers, but also listen even more so to those non-believers. So 3, innovate that goes right after that, number 2. Innovate to solve somebody's problems. Back to reality, right? What I'm also, exceedingly, probably more proud than anything else that my team's accomplished is that while I'm talking, right now, thousands of people are using our service. And I know that. And so, and that number has continued to grow. And it's basically the same thing that we invented and patented several years ago, which is just make it really, really easy and affordable for people to create legal documents, to natively digital legal documents. That's an important part of it. To e-sign them, to consult with a lawyer if they need one. When we started, most of the consumer-facing companies did not provide for real lawyers. And so that was actually what we patented to begin with. And now I know that that's happening, many, many thousands of times every day. And so, we've made some progress on solving people's problems with it. Number 4 is go all in, right? If you're going to be an entrepreneur, be prepared to go all in. There have been, multiple times where we could have given up on the big vision. Multiple times. We could have sort of narrowed and said, no, we're only going to do this or only going to do that. But if you go all in and you're willing to just jump into the deep end and the only way you're going to get out is to get to the other side, it focuses the mind. And so that's definitely a lesson that we've learned along the way. Number 5 kind of goes to that one also, make money. So legal tech companies, I was my firm represented FindLaw and Tim Stanley. Tim's not here. But my firm represented FindLaw when it started, I think that might have been 20 years ago now or something. And so I've seen I've seen a lot of this play out. And so what we've noticed is legal tech companies have tended not to be able to burn the massive amounts of cash that companies in other markets have been able to burn. WeWork, Uber, et cetera. Legal tech companies have tended to need to get to a place where they're making money sooner than other companies. Now, I will say it's awesome to see the amount of, I've never seen this much energy and enthusiasm and capital starting to come into our market. But again, having done this for a long time, and I used to represent venture funds, having done this for a long time, it's still one of the biggest pieces of advice, the legal tech commandments is, in your legal tech company, figure out how you're going to make money. Okay. And Rocket Lawyer is profitable. And so number 6, laugh a lot. So that is so important. It's so much better and makes life so much better. This stuff is hard. And and you're going to make a ton of mistakes. We've made a ton of mistakes. But if you laugh at the spilled milk instead of crying over it, it goes a long way. So I'm going to show you another slide later with some of my engineers. We have an office in Krakow, Poland, where we do a fair amount of our development. And so this is in Polish. And those guys are working really hard 3 weeks ago. And one of them threw this on one of our Slack channels. And so Menedzir means manager in Polish. And so this is how a lot of business works, right? There's poor Zenik here, and all the managers around him. All right. Number 7, be ready to fight. From bullying competitors to fighting on behalf of your customers to whatever it takes, be ready to fight. And look, I'm talking to a bunch of lawyers, so the idea of conflict is probably not something I need to dwell on a lot, so I won't. Number 8, remember that it's a team sport. I'm proud of the fact that we have hundreds of employees, right? And even millions of customers and users and involving that everybody in this as a team sport. It's not an individual effort at all in any of this. And I think legal tech especially, and I had another line up here that was, about making friends and making up with enemies. It's a team sport, and that also involves regulators. I think one of the things that I've written about is I think Uber made a mistake in sort of challenging regulators to the extent that they did. They had a lot of money to go do it. We haven't taken that approach. I've seen others in our category that have taken that very adversarial approach. And so when I say be ready to fight, also be ready to make up. And so legal tech commandment number 8 is remember that it's a team sport, both internally and externally. If everybody's going toward that same mission, for us, it's access to justice. And we've really been able to find allies 360 degrees around when we remember that first principle. Number 9, change course so the wind is in your sails. And so one of the things that we do a lot of now at Rocket Lawyer, back to that mission, we want to make legal services accessible to people. We have become an enterprise company. We have hundreds of enterprise customers, companies like Salesforce and Pinterest and lots of others, that we provide Rocket Lawyer as an employee benefit, and we provide tools to HR departments so that they can manage that benefit, et cetera, in the cloud. That wasn't in the original business plan, but it's right on mission. It gets millions of people access to legal services that otherwise wouldn't have had them. It's lucrative, of course, for us, and has been a big part of our growth for the last 5 or so years. And so changing course so the wind's in your sails is absolutely one of the 10 legal tech commandments. And number 10, finally, is to execute. Execute. And this is software. So, this is what execution in software ends up looking like on the human side. And behind these 3 people who we took a picture of at 1 a.m., this was 2 weeks ago, we finished off an enormous project to retire our legacy code base for our UK, Rocket Lawyer UK, which had been around for about 5 years. It's now on an entirely new code base. It was a massive undertaking that we have, hundreds of thousands of customers in the UK and all their data, et cetera, et cetera. Well, these guys gutted out the middle guy with our value t-shirt for the year is one of the Polish engineers. He was in San Francisco for this. And 1 a.m., I'm so proud of it. I'm going to put this, we have a wall of photos at the company. This is what software execution on the human side of it ends up looking like. And honestly, it'll bring me to tears because this is what, these guys, this is what it takes at the end of the day. So that's it, 10 legal tech commandments.
All right. Thanks for joining me today, everyone. I'm Jack Newton. I'm the founder and CEO of Clio, and I will explain what Clio does in a few slides. Notably, we just last week announced the fact that we had closed the largest investment in one of the largest investments in legal tech history with a thank you. We've got some fans here. So this was a $250 million raise from 2 great new investors, TCV and JMI Equity. And I think what is notable more than the size of the investment is maybe the pedigree of the investors and the kinds of companies they've backed in the past. TCV in particular has backed companies like Netflix, Spotify, Airbnb, and other companies that have really transformed the industries that they represent, and we certainly have the same kind of vision and hope for Clio in legal. So a little bit about me. I'm one of the original founders of Clio. I co-founded Clio with Ryan Govro 11 years ago. So we've been at this for a long time. We've long thought about ourselves as the upstarts and the startups, and it's with a bit of dismay maybe that I realize we're now one of the grandfathers of legal technology. We've been around in this space for a very long time, and we've seen significant evolution of the legal tech ecosystem over our 10 years in the space. I'm always keen to connect with founders and people building legal tech companies as well. So if you want to connect with me, I'm at Jack Newton on Twitter, and I'm jack@clio.com if you want to reach out by email as well. Clio is headquartered in Canada. The other thing we're very proud of is that we've built out a really significantly at-scale company in Vancouver, Canada, and we have a major office in Toronto and Calgary as well. So we've this $250 million investment round that I just mentioned is actually the largest growth equity investment in Canadian history. So very cool for an entire country, an investment in legal tech. It became the largest investment in the entire country's history, which is pretty incredible. And I wanted to kick off the presentation just kind of framing how we look at our mission at Clio. We talk about our mission, and one of the reasons we're able to attract such an amazing talent roster at Clio is that people buy into this mission. They're really passionate about the idea of transforming the practice of law for good. And when we talk about transforming the practice of law for good, there's kind of a deliberate double meaning there. We want transforming the practice of law for good to be our so-called dent in the universe, as Steve Jobs would put it. We want to have lasting and permanent change on the legal industry, and for that to be one of our the imprints of our life and one of the legacies that we leave behind as a group. And we also think there's a huge amount of opportunity to make law better for everybody, make it better for clients, for the consumers of legal services, and to make life a lot better for lawyers as well. This is a profession that suffers from many ailments, and we think that a lot of that can be cured by helping make the practice better, more efficient, and happier. A little bit about Clio in terms of where we're at in our trajectory. We have 150,000 legal professionals that depend on Clio worldwide. Our largest market, as you might expect, is the United States, but we have customers in over 90 countries. So I think when you're thinking about legal tech and the opportunity in legal tech, very important to frame it as a global opportunity. The needs of lawyers around the world we've found to be very similar. The needs, at least in the practice management sphere of a lawyer in Brazil or Germany or the UK or the United States, are virtually identical. And one of the key things we've done at Clio in our 10-year growth history is build out, evolve from being simply a product to being a platform. And Alma talked about this earlier today as one of our superpowers, really, is that we're able to extend our product in a meaningful way by integrating with what is now almost 200 integration partners that tie in with Clio and help extend it in really specialized ways and help us tailor the product to a specific law firm's needs. That could be tailoring Clio to a specific geography. It could be tailoring Clio to a specific practice area. So there's an enormous opportunity to leverage this platform angle of legal tech. You don't necessarily need to build a product like Clio. You can actually build an integration with a product like Clio that creates a huge amount of value for, say, a specific practice area, and build a really substantial business without having to recreate the fundamental building blocks of the technology, like sign-on and billing and so on. And our company is currently over 400 people strong, headquartered in Vancouver with 4 additional offices worldwide. And one of the things I'm most proud of as well is that at Clio we've built what I believe is a really special culture, and that special culture has evolved with us over the course of being a 2-person startup 11 years ago, with myself and Ryan working out of our respective basements, to a culture that is now recognized as one of the best corporate cultures in North America. And for those of you that have met some of the Clio team, I hope you agree. It's a special group of people that are really passionate about the mission they're pursuing. And finally, Clio has been recognized as a clear category leader in the legal practice management space. And as I mentioned, the capstone on all of this is a new $250 million investment that we just closed. So I say all of this to talk about the accomplishments of Clio over the last 10 years. But one of the things I wanted to convey in this presentation is that I think looking from the outside in at success stories, it can often look kind of unattainable. How do you get there? And startup founders are very guilty of getting up in front of crowds like this and talking about how it's been nothing but net for them over the last 10 years and just winning constantly. And one of the things I want to convey in this talk is the fact that it's really fucking hard, and it's a grind. It's a grind to succeed at anything, especially if you're doing something new. So let's rewind to what Clio looked like 11 or 10 years ago. And that's a much better perspective for anyone in this room that's thinking about building a legal tech company in the future, or even trying to inject the law firm that you might join with a healthy dose of technology. You've got a struggle ahead of you, and I want to talk a little bit about some of the struggles we've tackled over the years. So let's rewind 11 years. Clio was built out and announced shortly after Steve Jobs got on stage and announced the first iPhone. For those of you that remember that presentation, one of the greatest keynotes of all time, 3 devices in one. This is a phone that is not just a phone. The wildly dominant technology device in legal at the time, and something our customers begged us to build an app for was, of course, the BlackBerry. Unfortunately, a Canadian ultimate success and then failure story, a fate I hope to avoid. But I'm so glad I didn't listen to that early customer feedback. So there's one lesson: you don't always listen to your customers. Otherwise, we would have spent a lot of energy building an app for BlackBerry. But this sets the stage for what the kind of technological landscape we were entering. And to the quote that Richard mentioned this morning around the best way of predicting the future is to invent it. I think that's really how I'd characterize myself and my co-founder Ryan at the time. We were 2 technologists. My background's in computer science. His background was in business, and he was the IT manager at a law firm. And we saw how the users at his law firm were using technology, or better put, not using technology. At the same moment, we noticed this unbelievable technological transformation wave called the cloud that was terraforming every industry we could see, radically reshaping industries like sales, with Salesforce coming and displacing established players like Siebel Systems. And we became what I would describe as 2 hammers looking for a nail. We really saw this once in a lifetime opportunity to ride this technological transformation wave and to apply it to an industry that could really benefit from the cloud. And we identified legal as one of those opportunities, and decided to believe in this intuition we had that it was a great idea and could really positively impact legal. So we started building Clio. We started coding the first versions of Clio with our own savings. We were moonlighting. We were doing this off the side of our desk while we were working day jobs. And as Charlie mentioned, legal tech has not traditionally had a ton of investment dollars flowing into it. The first couple of years that we built Clio, it was literally off of our own limited savings, off of running up credit card debt, and doing everything we could to raise small amounts of friends and family and fools funding from folks that would give us money. For early investors in Clio, though, I made a very explicit anti-promise, which was, I want you to invest money that you can afford to light on fire, because that's essentially what you're doing in investing in an early stage startup. Happily, it worked out well for those folks. Here's what the first homepage for Clio looked like. You can see, for those of you that are old enough to remember the world of Web 2.0, this was a very Web 2.0 homepage. And this is me and Ryan at the very first launch of Clio at the ABA Tech Show 2008, where we scrapped together $3,000 of our life savings to go and exhibit and to try to launch Clio and see if we could get some traction with a bunch of technology philic lawyers. We were lucky enough to meet Bob Ambrogi, actually, who's in the audience today, who wrote the very first blog post about Clio and introduced the concept of Clio to the world. And it was no easy journey to get there. We had to find the early believers, the folks that wanted to sign up for an early beta program. And finally, we realized that we had to start raising money. Here's a picture, the other thing that happened in my life. I had my first child the same year we launched Clio. I think there's often the perception that you can't have a family and be a startup founder at the same time. My wife made it really clear to me that wasn't an option. We would have to do both. I'm so glad we did. It had actually ended up being a very additive thing to my startup experience, and I find we now have 3 kids. There's such a huge outlet and a huge source of energy for me as well that I think, we often think about building a startup, and I think the Silicon Valley lore is the idea of a single guy holed up in his basement eating Doritos and pizza for months at a time and launching a product like Facebook out of his dormitory. And the reality is really vastly different. You see founders of all sorts of different walks of life, different stages of life, launching very successful products. So don't let the stereotypes of what I think, again, the Silicon Valley culture portrays startup founders as looking like as being reality. All you need is conviction that you've got a great idea, and you can create the space to execute against that idea regardless of what walk of life you're coming from or what your stage of life is. Also, get really used to hearing no. We just closed this massive $250 million investment round, but as I like to say, the first million is the hardest. Raising the first dollar, raising the first $1,000 or $100,000 from investors is so difficult. Raising our first $100,000 was an order of magnitude more difficult than raising, if you can believe it, $250 million. And I say that with no sense of hyperbole. When you are just an idea and somebody is betting on basically an idea and your ability to execute it against it, it is the biggest leap of faith anybody can take. So we were trying to raise money in 2009, 2010. And again, this was not a great time to be raising money. This was on the wrong side of the 2008, 2009 financial crisis in the US. It's hard to recall those days, but people were legitimately worried that the financial system as we knew it was about to collapse. Some of the best VCs in the Valley were just not writing checks over that 2-year period. So we heard a lot of no's. This was the cover. I remember going through an airport on the way to go to one of these investment forums to pitch Clio, and this was the cover of The Economist, and I thought this is a wonderful time to be raising money. This is a picture of Bear Stearns and all the major banks going down the tubes. And I guess also trust in luck. Every successful startup story has some healthy amount of serendipity and luck that falls into play. This was an email we received from Christoph Jans, who cold emailed us. You can see here in 2008. He emailed us while we were trying to raise money and having such a difficult time, and introduced himself, said that he invested in a company called Zendesk, while it's still just 4 guys in Copenhagen. For those of you that don't know Zendesk, it's now a wildly popular customer success platform, multi-billion-dollar company traded on the New York Stock Exchange. And he cold emailed us saying he was interested in investing in Clio. As you can imagine, Google and its excellent spam filters decided that this email from a guy from a web.de email address, which they probably assumed was a German pornography site, was emailing me about potentially investing in Clio, and assumed this met all the criteria of an investment scam. This is a Nigerian prince asking for investment dollars. We also, I'll follow up here. The last part of this story is by going to our spam filter and being completely ignored by myself and Ryan, we inadvertently slow played Christoph. And my other pro tip is that investors only get more interested in investing in you if you don't respond to them. So he sent a follow-up email saying 2 weeks later, I remain very interested in investing in Clio. I'd love to jump on the phone and chat with you. And again, that went straight to our spam filter. And I'm, in what I can only describe as an act of God, Ryan was on an extremely long phone call with a customer one day, decided to check his spam folder to see what was in there. Has anybody ever done that? I haven't. Checked his spam folder, saw this email, forwarded it to me, said, this looks legit. I follow up with Christoph, and 6 months later, he's leading our $1 million Series A with a $500,000 check. And the rest is history. So unfortunately, I give this flavor of talk sometimes, and the takeaway message is check your spam folder. And I'm sure you'll be disappointed, but never lose faith. There are serendipitous moments like this that happen in every startup story. You never know which conversation is going to lead to an introduction that ends up leading to a lead investor, for example. So trust that there's good luck out there waiting for all of us. My other big learning in building Clio is that, I was a huge fan of 37 Signals, who make a product called Basecamp. If some of you are familiar with them, they really advocate this idea that you should bootstrap your business, that you shouldn't raise venture capital, and really, I think I've learned that that's obviously nonsense. I think that almost every product that we're building today, especially subscription-based products, the almost paradoxical quality of these products is the faster you're growing, the faster you're burning cash. Because for almost all of these businesses, your customer acquisition costs are totally front-loaded. You might make $10,000 from a customer over their lifetime with you, but it might cost you $3,000 to acquire them the first month that they become a customer. That could be Google AdWords or marketing or whatever other costs you have to acquire a customer. So this paradoxical quality of having high growth drive high burn is a really tough law to fight against. The other thing to realize is that for almost every space, there's, especially in the SaaS space, there is a winner takes most dynamic, where if you become the leader in the space, you have an unnatural right to win the entire market. And there's this flywheel effect that helps the leaders in a category, and if you invest aggressively in becoming the leader, that will pay dividends to you for years to come, thanks to that leadership position. So realizing that, and this is something that Christoph helped myself and my co-founder Ryan realize, it really pivoted our perspective. And we originally founded Clio with a very modest goal of becoming a lifestyle company for himself and me. We thought if this threw off, $100,000 a year that we could divvy up and live off of, this would be a wild success. And Christoph helped us realize that that's probably not a realistic outcome for Clio. We need to kind of swing for the fences and try to win the market or die trying. And we decided to do exactly that. And our grander vision now, to conclude, just to share that vision and maybe highlight what I see as a larger opportunity, our mission with Clio, our vision for Clio is to build the operating system for legal. As Robert pointed out this morning in the introductory remarks, legal remains one of the last major industries to be fundamentally transformed by technology. And we want Clio to be one of the major change agents helping change that for the legal industry, for the legal profession. And we think there's an enormous opportunity for ourselves and many other companies to become wildly successful and to help enable the profession to get to the next level by driving this transformation. I'm going to skip over a couple slides here. Mobility is a huge opportunity. Legal is one of the most mobile professions around, and any kind of application or legal tech opportunity that focuses on mobility, I think, is a huge opportunity. And clients are highly mobile as well. So thinking about the mobile opportunity is huge. One of the other piece of advice I'll give is that when you talk to potential investors about your legal tech idea, I think one of the earliest forks you'll see in whether they're a potential investor or not is whether they think the legal industry has a sufficient TAM or total addressable market for an investment from them. There's many VCs that will instantly react, oh, we think the legal market is too small. But I think if you frame this opportunity with over 500,000 law firms in the US alone, a couple of interesting data points jump off the page here. Number one, as attractive as the AmLaw 50 or AmLaw 100 are, you can see that this is a wildly SMB market. it is very left skewed in the sense that we have over 80% of lawyers practicing in firms of 10 or less lawyers, and we have half of all lawyers practicing as solos. So when you're thinking about the market opportunity for legal tech especially, thinking about the SMB market, that the cloud makes more addressable from a marketing and sales perspective than ever before, this I think remains one of the largest untapped opportunities. And there's so many companies, including the big guys, that are still laser focused on the big firms and leaving this solo small firm opportunity for the rest of us. Our broader vision around transforming the practice of law for good, to conclude, I think really ties into what I describe as the latent legal market. And it's this idea that so many lawyers talk about the fact that the number one thing they need is more clients. They talk about how competitive the space is or how commodified the space is getting. But at the end of the day, when you look at the World Justice Project data that tells us that 77% of legal problems didn't receive legal assistance, didn't receive help from a lawyer, in my mind, we have this paradox almost, where we have lawyers telling us on the supply side that the number one thing they need is more clients and more work. And on the demand side, we've got consumers telling us indirectly that most of their legal issues do not get resolved by lawyers. This is just an enormous opportunity for all of us to improve what I like to describe as the product market fit problem between consumers and lawyers. When we have a $300 billion annual spend on legal services in the US alone, and 77% of consumers telling us that their legal issues go unresolved by lawyers, this suggests that there's very easily a multi-$100 billion opportunity waiting for innovative lawyers and innovative companies to deliver legal services in a different way to tap into this market opportunity. And I think if you were only mildly incremental and innovative in the way that you deliver your legal services, you're going to tap into that multi-$100 billion opportunity without even trying all that hard. And I think there are dozens of legal tech companies waiting to be created with a vision of how to tap into what's below the waterline in the legal market. Thanks for your time, and I'll be hanging around for the rest of the day if you want to chat. Thank you.
All right, our next presenter is AJ from Everlaw.
Hello again, everybody. I got 15 minutes this time. It's a luxury. All right. So I'm going to talk a little bit about how I got into the space, which is, I guess, the stated intention of this session, but also, more importantly, why I got into this space. I'm going to make an argument for why legal tech is interesting to technologists. So this is not directed at you, but it's for you, so you can tell your tech friends to create a legal tech startup. I think this is something that, if you think about as a technical person with the enormous array of opportunities available to you, software is eating the world. I can go anywhere. Why law? I think there's a really good, compelling argument to be made for why law is really a good field. And so I'm going to present that to you in the hopes that you can remember some of this. When you talk to your tech friends, you can remind them of this. So my introduction was sheer luck, really, into legal. I was getting my PhD in computer science, right? And I was always working on side projects, which really irritated my advisor, but ended up being useful, because I learned a lot about a vast array of technologies. And when a law firm came to the Berkeley PhD department looking for a technical expert who knew about X, Y, and Z, I happened to know about X, Y, and Z. And I said, okay, I'll help you. Consulted for them part-time, supplementing my fellowship money, which is nice. But that was my introduction to this field. Nothing more than that. I got to see how the sausage was made, which was fascinating. Got to see some of the technical challenges in this space and recognize kind of the opportunity. And so had I not had that completely random thing, I never would even consider the field, obviously, right? If you're a tech entrepreneur and you want to create a startup, you might be thinking about building the next Google or Facebook. You're not thinking about building the next e-discovery company, right? It just doesn't occur to you. So I'm lucky that it did occur to me, but I would like this to be, not a happy accident for the next generation of technical entrepreneurs. So let me now tell you about why I think this is a really attractive space for tech entrepreneurs for a lot of different reasons. The first thing I'll say is the law matters, right? This is obvious to you. You're all in the space. You think about it all the time. But it matters to everyone else. too, right? Law is a pillar of modern democracy. We operate the country under the rule of law, I hope. I think that's really, really important. And that's meaningful to everybody. We care about that. And the law deserves great technology. And this is an argument, I think, that, again, if you're an entrepreneur, you could be thinking about building the next, advertising technology company or marketing tech company or whatever it is. And those things are kind of like a little part of your soul dies if you go do that. But the law is somewhere where you can actually, where the problems you're solving are meaningful. And I think for a lot of technologists, that's really, really appealing. The second thing is, the problems in this space that we're trying to solve are technical. They're not legal, right? You can imagine a technologist saying, well, I'm not a lawyer. Well, how do I do any of this stuff? The reality is, if you think about it, the problems we're solving, big data at scale, artificial intelligence, real-time collaboration, data visualization, these are all technical, right? As someone who comes to the space with a really good set of technical tools, you're really well suited to solve those problems, right? So you might imagine asking me, well, how do you know what to build? Like, you didn't go to law school. Well, you do it the way every product company in the world knows what to build. You develop expertise, right? We have deep domain expertise. We have 20 plus lawyers at Everlaw. We have tens of thousands of users we talk to all the time. I know the nitty-gritty of every single thing about discovery at this point. You learn that stuff, and it's really valuable. But what we bring to bear that you can't get from the legal side is that really deep technical bench, how to solve really hard problems. The analogy I like to use here about why to a technologist this makes sense is, if you go to you talk to a doctor, and the doctor wants to build an MRI machine, right? I want greater insight into my patients. Very complicated machine, right? The doctor doesn't go to another doctor and say, build me an MRI machine. They go to an engineer who's really good at building machines, and they talk about it, and then they work together. I think that's a really fruitful partnership, and for a technologist, having an engaged end user who cares about this stuff is really meaningful. And so this is something that's actually a strength for a technologist coming into this space, as opposed to a weakness. The next thing I'll say is that the technical problems are actually really hard, and that is good. That's really exciting. In many of these industries, the tech is shallow, and it's just kind of table stakes to get going and build your business. But if you're a tech nerd, as I am, you want to be interested in what you're doing for a long period of time. You want to be engaged in the technical problems that you have. And this is a space where you get that in spades. One of the things we do, right, we help people find needles in haystacks, right? That is a gloriously hard problem in computer science. It requires bringing the cutting edge in, computer science, academia to bear on every aspect of this problem, right? That's really compelling. Knowing that I could do this and be interested in it a decade later, that's exciting, right? As someone coming out of technology. So from an intellectual perspective, it's killer. And then on the client side, the good news is also that for clients, they're really discerning, and the technology makes a difference. That's meaningful. You can imagine it being technically, kind of intellectually interesting, but not meaningful to clients. But it is meaningful to clients, right? So you think about, running a company and you're deciding what to use for your file storage platform, right? It might be Box or Dropbox or Google Drive or whatever, and you're going to do some kind of analysis, and you'll pick one of them that you like. Your business's success is not going to be predicated on which of those technologies you use. It just isn't. It's like they're all going to be all right. But absolutely 100%, you can win or lose a case based on the legal technology that you use. And you can affect the outcomes that you have, be more or less successful at your job based on this technology. So people really care about this stuff, and that's extremely exciting as a technologist. You want the thing you're best at doing to be relevant in the market, and it is, right? So I think that's really compelling. And the second thing is that users are discerning. Like, people love this stuff. In our industry, the devil is in the details, and no one's afraid of the devil. Like, I love going and talking with folks about this. They like getting into that nitty-gritty, and I think that's really meaningful. If anyone's a stickler for details, it's lawyers, and that and the other set of folks for whom it is engineers. So we're match made in heaven. I love that. One other thing I'll mention here, which is, I think, meaningful, is there's a lot of business models you can create with a company you're founding, right? Some of them are really messy. Some of them are, I have my users over here, and I have my advertisers over here. It's a free service. I got to figure out who my real master is. Are my incentives aligned with the people I'm serving, and who are those people? That's a hard problem to solve. And as an engineer who wants kind of something simple and elegant, the law provides a natural way to build a healthy business. What we do is we build a product, And if people like the product, they pay for it. And if they don't like the product, they don't pay for it. Very simple. One of the nice byproducts of that is that we're always incentivized to do what's right for our users. We never have to ask that tough question about whether to favor our advertisers or our end users or anything like that. And I think that is actually really, really compelling. And this is a revenue-oriented business, right? You can actually make money doing it, conceivably, and I think that makes things simple. The market will tell you what's good and what's bad, and I like that. The final point I'll make here is the opportunity for impact is huge, right? We talked about how the law matters, but at a more concrete level, you have, I guess I'll explain how I think about it for what we do, right? So where I live in the Bay Area, California, thousands of startups, many of whom are making apps or games or whatever, and they'll make this thing where for 5 minutes a day, you can use their app, and that's a big win. And they'll have millions of users, by the way. And that's actually super cool, right? They're generating 5 million user minutes of happiness a day. That's worthwhile, right? We don't operate in the same way, right? We have tens of thousands of users rather than millions. But they'll use Everlaw for 8 hours a day. There'll be people who their whole job is to use our piece of software. And if we do a good job, we can materially affect their happiness. We can make them happier at the end of the day and more productive and more successful in their jobs by building a good product. That's incredibly satisfying. At a higher level, you don't get the opportunity to change the way work is done in an industry that often. You just don't. If you care about access to justice or truth as a motivator of justice, there's all kinds of things where this is an opportunity for you to make a difference in a meaningful way on society. And I think for a lot of technologists, they want that thing. We don't know how to get it. We don't know where to go. But the law is a great area for that. So for me, these have all been really motivating reasons to do this. It covers the spectrum, right? Can you build a successful business? Yes. Can you be intellectually satisfied? Yes. Can you make your users happy? Yes. Can you make a positive effect on society? Yes. These are no-brainers, right? For some reasons, for entrepreneurs, it's just not on the roadmap. So if you can kind of write all this stuff down and go to your nerd friends, probably be at some board game cafe somewhere. I like board games. This is the argument to make, and hopefully that next generation will come, not by accident, but on purpose, and that would be really exciting. Cool. Thank you.
Our final speaker for the session isn't actually physically here. And one of the things that I noticed in preparing the panels and preparing the session is that there's a very strong focus on the United States. And so I tried to bring in some more international voices. I'll queue up her video, and that'll be the final speaker for this session.
My name is Madeline Kimei. Greetings from Tanzania. I am the visionary founder of iResolve. Just at the outset, I would like to thank, a very warm thank you to the Harvard Law and Technology Society, which is hosting this 2019 Harvard Legal Technology Symposium, for giving me this opportunity, first of all, to address you all from where I'm sitting, which is my office in Dar es Salaam. Well, what I would say is that my story is not a unique one, it's not an exceptional one, but it is an important one. It is a very important one. As you well know, that the statistics are very, very much so on about 75 billion worth of internet activity in by 2025, especially on the e-commerce market, which will be driven mostly by the youth. And the youth really is in the African continent, having about 70% of its people still as the young generation who are the actual users of technology. And so not providing them with a legal technology or a legal solution will be ignoring them, ignoring the elephant in the room, which is not the case. So the idea came about to create an online dispute portal. And this idea was to add value to my clientele initially. So when I set off in 2014 from being a private in-house counsel at banking institutions, I established a private practice, which is a fully pledged arbitration and dispute resolution practice here in Tanzania. It was the first of its kind. Yes, it was. And so being that it was the first of its kind, and considering my background in the banking and financial sectors, or the industry itself, bank and finance, they have been moving quite speedily or very rapidly towards tech, and as we all know. And I realized that this is a critical gap between the technology in the legal and regulatory frameworks within the space that we were working, and the means of which people were resolving disputes, especially banking and financial disputes. And so an internet-based mediation and arbitration and dispute resolution platform would not only slash and cut the costs, enabling the settlement of disputes in a tech world, but also enabling these parties to achieve a resolution to their disputes in a speedily and more transparent and secure manner. So this is what I saw. There was a need to transform the norm in our legal service provisioning by adapting a technology that would then be attractive to the end users. As you see, this was in essence what I was aiming to create, that would be then ending up to be a one-stop shop for disputants for the resolution of their disputes by the use of technology. iResolve was launched in 2015 with our tagline being changing the way people approach disputes. So I reached out to a friend. I have no technology background, and so therefore I inquired for a reference for a tech development company in Tanzania. And through my inquiry, I then came across a friend who was able to do what I had envisioned. Prior to doing so, I spent hours doing my research online and offline, of course, on ODR and what it entailed. This research was the foundation of the initial draft plan, which I shared with the web developer or the tech developer that I had engaged then. It was in those closed doors between me and myself and my tech developer that we created the A to Z in the system of iResolve. Now, to confess, really, iResolve initially started as a matter of just a management tool, case management tool, or if I was to say, more or less very static and not interactive at all. One would just log into the system and retrieve maybe historical data about their case or their matter that is being handled by a counsel within the firm. It also had closed chat rooms, which were very static in its form, which were just merely allowing the parties to communicate to themselves, the counsels, the dispute manager, and the neutrals. So this was phase one. It was simple, easy, accessible web portal with closed, secure chat rooms and document management. Over the past 4 years, though, our approach has become more customer-oriented. Hence, you're able to notice that in 2018, we integrated a payment solution that was tagged iResolve Pay. This is a trademark under iResolve to allow parties to make payments of their fees on the portal. We're now working towards embedding e-conference facilities, and this is being worked on by our tech team. And also, further to that ambition, we have been talking around getting a mobile app that would support and complement the current portal, which is a web-only solution. Also, in order to get more usage, we amended our engagement letters to include the platform as part of an added value service for our clientele. So our clients are able to track their matters assigned in for a dispute resolution or a litigation that we have been engaged in. With tech, really what I would say is that there is never an end to improving the experience of the end user. We therefore have to strive to ensure that the process of dispute resolution is seamlessly carried out on the portal without having to go offline. And so the solution really is an equal justice or an equal access to justice system, because such access available online and the efforts that have to be taken by the users to remedy their disputes is in an affordable manner. We have faced a lot of challenges, and we continue to face these challenges. In our 5th year now, in 2019, the first major challenge is, I would say, the use and application of the platform. And in our market right now, in our legal market, and the clientele is unable to use this particular system, maybe because of the resistance within the tech legal solution sector. Also, another challenge that I see is that there is no funding opportunities available for legal solutions such as iResolve. Most of these innovation awards or recognitions are not focused on Africa, but are more globally and globally focused. And becoming aware of such initiatives is very difficult. One has to have the right connections and the right network to know that there's a particular funding for an innovation in the legal sector. Also, there's fear of poor protection and security of confidential information exchanges between parties in an ODR platform. This fear is still there, and our legislation would have to be worked on. Conceptual cultural challenge is also another issue that in the African context, if you're designing a system for the African context, you need to consider many issues such as languages and different dialects that are available within the continent. Not so also parties who are offline and unable to access that system, being that connection is poor. Although I would not say that connection should be an issue, because really connection has improved over the years, and most rural people do have connections to the internet. Another challenge here faced by ODR is that the pace in changing the law within our jurisdictions is frustratingly slow. And being the case, then supporting ODR systems such as iResolve has become not a very important agenda. Well, so then we're driving this particular initiative called the ODR for Africa Foundation, and it seeks to base on improving or realizing the ODR systems that are in place in Africa, and that continent-wise, ODR systems are very important for the African market, especially the legal fraternity. Under the ODR Foundation, ODR for Africa Foundation initiative, we're also conducting research and feasibility studies on the use and application of ODR in the continent, and to roll out also capacity building, education, and awareness programs across the continent, working from region to region and creating awareness about the possibility of online dispute resolutions. So I would say ours is an inspiring tale. So if you fast forward to 2018, there has been an eruption of legal tech solutions in Tanzania. So iResolve is a success story. And so I welcome you all to Tanzania, to the land of the Kilimanjaro, and thank you for the opportunity for presenting to you from where I'm sitting, my office in Dar es Salaam. Thank you so much.